Joe Rogan apologizes and starts to go on his apology tour, not for his misinformation, but for a video that was dug up almost immediately afterwards of him repeatedly using what is considered to be a racial slur over and over and over again, because that's the way that video editing works. In other news, GoFundMe has landed themselves in hot waters with a lot of its donors and possibly some governors as well, as it became apparent that they are going to hold the money that was donated for the Canadian truckers and possibly redistribute it to acceptable charities. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that and what that means. The RNC has advanced a resolution to censure Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. We were supposed to talk about this on Friday, but we completely ran out of time. But hey, since today's Monday, we're not going to run out of time today, so we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. And Stacey Abrams goes to visit a Georgia school where the kids have to remain masked. And what does Stacey Abrams do? Not wear a mask. It is going to be all this and more over our Contemporary. You are just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We got a way late start today. Oh my god. I was laying in bed at 7:10 and like, crap, I gotta get up and still organize all my tabs. It's been a long weekend, you guys. It's been a crazy weekend, both in the news and out of the news. So we're here though. The news stops for nobody, and we have got to get back on our regular weekly schedule too. A couple announcements before we get started. There is no daily ignoramus today. So if we do go a little bit long, that's going to be a little bit fine. So stick around, hang with me. And we do have plenty of stuff to go really, really long on the show today, too, by the way. I'm telling you right now, we're over 40 tabs again. So no daily ignoramus today, but still go back. I hope everybody went out and checked out Stephen Ignoramus on the Mad Ones. That was awesome. Ace Archist on the Porch Boys. And I do hope everybody's going around to go and check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. That's right, that is our start page, turnsofpagesproductions.com. Will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, where we are going to carry great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Porch Boys, also The R-Rated Conservative, The Freckles and Brit Show, and The Breakdown with Birkenhoff. So, well, not The Freckles and Brit Show anymore, because she's actually got a new upcoming project with Sean Hickman that we're going to pick up instead. So go check out all those shows. Go check out all those creators. They are all wonderful people. They're amazing people, and you should be hanging out with all of them as well. And go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. As we get up, we get ready, and we get started. Let's look at finance for the morning. The Dow dropped ever so slightly throughout the day. It was a whipsaw day again, dropping throughout the day to 34.8, clearing and retaking the 35,000 line, coming back up over the top, and then closing 20 points down to 111.16. So the Dow, I mean, it's sitting back at steady, and we'll see what happens with that as it goes, and we'll look and see what IBD, the USA Today, have to say about what it is that's going on with there. Let's have a look at Bitcoin for the morning. Your Bitcoin is at $42,782 US dollars and 40 US cents. Those of you who held Bitcoin over this weekend, congratulations. You're doing better than you were on Friday when it was still at 35,000. I mean, we can back out to the 5-day and see where the big jump was, but yeah, it looks like on Friday, throughout the day Friday, because that is 2 p.m. on Friday, just a gigantic jump on Friday, and then another significant jump on Saturday at midnight, and then another somewhat significant jump on Monday. So, like I say, those of you who held on to the Bitcoin, who didn't come out and sell out, congratulations! You're doing a little well. I sold my Bitcoin, but that's because I prefer not to use that particular coin because of the connotations that have come with the federal government recently. But I still tell you, you can do whatever the hell it is that you want with your money. Do consult with your financial advisor, of course, always, but that's where our Bitcoin is going right now. And this possibly could point to the fact that some people may have some more disposable income that they thought they did, or it could point to the fact that our regular cash is getting more and more worthless. We will see what happens with that, and we will continue to go. Let's see what the scrap metal looks like for the day. Copper is on the upturn. Steel is on the upturn. Aluminum is on the downturn on the averages. Copper has had another day where almost everything is in the green. Romex wire is the only copper play that has dropped. Iron is a little bit more mixed. Light iron is up, number one steel is down, cast iron is up, and rotors are up, but complete car is also down. Shreddable steel and stainless steel are both up. Aluminum, also mixed at this point. Siding is up, aluminum copper pin is down. Radiators are down, cans are up, sheet aluminum is up, siding, rims are down rather. And looking in at your individual plays, electric motors are up, ballasts are up, lead is up, but batteries are down in spite of lead being up. All catalytic converters have turned positive, so you can go check that out. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is down, hard drives are down, motherboards are down, power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC tower is down. So, I usually tell you, watch for the ups and downs there, but nah. Looking at it right now, it might be time to go bring those PC pieces in, because it looks like all of them are on the downswing, which means they may have peaked, at least temporarily. But of course, this is not official financial advice. Go check with your local prices, check with the supply that you have, and see what works best for you. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. From Investors Business Daily. Oh, the Olympics were this weekend? I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. No, I remember you guys talking about the opening ceremony on Thursday and Friday, so I did know that the Olympics were going on, but I had other shit to do. Plain and simple. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures rise with market rally at key point. Peloton soars on buyout buzz. From Ed Carson, Dow Jones futures rose slightly Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. The stock market rally started off strong last week, but paired gains considerably amid big earnings moves and soaring treasury yields. Investors need patience and discipline right now, keeping exposure light, while waiting to see if the confirmed market rally powers higher or breaks down. Apple, Alphabet, Qualcomm, and Microsoft are tech giants that are holding up well, setting up potential entries. All of these stocks have already reported strong quarterly results and have relatively modest price-earnings ratios. Meanwhile, Tesla stock has more work to do to get in a position, but it is holding up better than the most highly valued growth plays. Tesla also has already reported earnings. Peloton Worldwide skyrocketed late Friday on a Wall Street Journal report that Amazon is mulling the connected bike and treadmill maker for a potential takeover. There you go. Amazon takes over more of our lives. Nike could also be a suitor for Peloton, the Financial Times reported Saturday. Hey, if Nike takes it over, the prices will probably come down. I mean, think about how little you have to spend on a Peloton or something when it's made by Chinese slaves that don't make a wage in a day. And if they step out of line, their genitals are mutilated. The Financial Times reported Saturday, but both reports stressed that no talks have been underway. Wedbush's Dan Ives speculated that Peloton would make a lot of sense for Apple. Blackwell's Capital has been pushing the board to fire CEO John Foley and explore a Peloton sale. Amazon's logistics could help address Peloton's supply chain issues. Peloton, really? Did you know that at the start of last year, and especially into 2020, if you ordered something on Amazon for Prime, you got it the next day, or if it was after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the day after. You had a one-day turnaround on Amazon. You don't fucking have that anymore. If you order from Amazon, get down, get set, and get ready to wait a week. And that's what it's getting to be. Like anything, and the Amazon distribution house, by the way, is an hour over there. I think it's more than that. I think it's an hour and a half. An hour and a half over in that direction. So yeah, Amazon supply chain issues. Yeah, that's a funny fucking joke. Peloton's subscription service potentially could be folded into Amazon Prime. Nike would also offer global logistics and reach, while Peloton could add fitness equipment and subscription revenue to Nike's athletic apparel empire. In pre-market trade Monday, Peloton stock surged 35%. A massive coronavirus winner, Peloton peaked at 171.09 in early 2021 and crashed to a record low 22.81 on January 28th. Shares rose 1.4% to 24.60 at Friday's close. Amazon, up 13.5% on Friday's earnings, was little changed before Monday's open, along with Nike. In other news, Spirit Airlines and Frontier Airlines are agreed to merge. Spirit Airlines will receive 1.9126 ULCC shares of Frontier, plus $2.13 in cash for each existing Spirit share they own. This implies a value of $25.83 at a 19% premium. So they'll get almost two shares per stock that they own in the other one, plus a short premium. That's not insignificant. Tesla and Microsoft are on the IBD leaderboard. Microsoft and Google are on IBD long-term leaders. Google and Tesla stock are on the IBD 50. Qualcomm is on the Big Cap 20 on the futures. Dow futures rose 0.2% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures advanced 0.3%, and NASDAQ futures climbed 0.5%. It's hard to get too excited about modest overnight moves, up or down, given the big intraday and daily swings over the past few weeks. The 10-year Treasury yield fell 1 basis points to 1.92%. That's a fall? Holy fuck! It was 1.89 when we left on Friday. Crude futures declined 1%. Remember that overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So with that, I mean, we've seen the numbers, we've seen what's going on here, and I've made my criticism of Amazon and their delivery service lately. Let's actually look at what a lot of stock means for a lot of people, because they're not sitting out there doing the Wolf of Wall Street thing with a line of cocaine on the back of a DeLorean, like Charlie Sheen did. For the most part, when people are looking at stock, they're looking at, can I retire, Sonny? Because that's where most of your stock lands, if you have any stock at all. And a lot of people don't ever see their stock. They have no idea what it is. It's in a mutual fund. They decide whether it's going to be safe, moderate, or aggressive, and they go from there. So this is an interesting way to look at this here from the USA Today with a turbulent Dow. What should you do with your 401k retirement account? This is from Craig Harris. Exhale. That's the advice from several financial experts across the country who said that investors shouldn't do anything rash with their 401k. Please keep your money in stocks. We promise it's not crashing. Amid a turbulent 2022 stock market. And that's the reason that we have a propaganda piece like this too, by the way. As soon as I saw exhale, and that's the advice from several financial advisors who say that you shouldn't do anything rash, that's exactly, I didn't pre-read this article. I'm going to tell you that right now. As soon as I saw that first paragraph, I knew what this was. People are getting nervous about what the market could do, and they're starting to sell off their stock. And now, USA Today is coming out and begging them, please don't sell your stock. It's going to look terrible on us if the Dow crashes again. But if somebody who's both evil and orange and evil is in the office, sell off your stock. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. You're going to lose everything. Oh no. Behind that drama are bigger worries, including expectations that the Federal Reserve will raise short-term rates next month, and that any increase would mark an abrupt turnaround from much of the last 2 years to when ultra-low rates helped prices surge for everything from stocks to cryptocurrencies. That's why Wall Street has been shaky over the last month. On Friday, though, the volatility ended on a positive note for the 401k accounts. The S&P 500 index, a broad measure of stocks used as a benchmark for many mutual funds closed up 0.5%, while the tech-focused Nasdaq climbed 1.6%. Dow was little changed. With fewer private companies offering pensions, retirement, 401k have become popular, with Americans who want more than Social Security payment to help with their golden years. The booming markets last year created a record number of 401k millionaires, with at least 360 booming markets. Yes, the booming markets went exactly back to where they were. The booming markets last year, let that sink in for just a second to what kind of a propaganda piece this is. What did we hit before the crash? I actually want to look at that. So let's actually stretch this out 5 years. Let's stretch that out for that. I know, we're way off topic already. I know I said that we need to stay on topic, but we're way off topic already. So, this is 2021. There's January 22nd, we'll use that one. The January 2nd was at 30,996.38. And at, yeah, there we go. Come on, grab that one. 31,097.97 was at January 8th, 2 days after the Selfie Fest. So that's the benchmark of where we are when they say booming markets. And now we have made it to, and I'll admit, a significant jump, 36,000 as we go along. But they act like, I mean, this is just a gigantic boom. This was right before the market sell-off, 29,398.08. Down to 173.98. Which means, I mean, in all honesty, I would call this the boom, and this is just kind of stagnant. That's what I would see off of that. I mean, this right here, just this little section here between, let's see if we can catch the bottom, between March 20th and April 17th, that's the boom. That's the boom right there. But no, they're going to continue to feed you propaganda. So, yeah, they're telling you to hold on to your 401k. And I'm not telling you to get rid of your 401k. I'm telling you to look at it, decide what's going to be best for you, and actually look into the stocks and the bonds and everything else that are actually in your 401k. Look deep into that. Tell your financial advisor, yes, I want this. No, I don't want this. And actually make the decision. Be active in it. Don't just let another Wall Street billionaire come back and tell you, no, this is what you need to do. Don't even ask questions. But that's what they're saying for you. Let's get into the big news of the day, and we are going to start with CNN. And there's video to go with this too, but we'll read a little bit of this first. From Ramisha Maroof and Brian Stelter, because of course it has to be Brian Stelter. You know that I'm older than Brian Stelter is? I'm not going to make too much fun of Brian Stelter's hair loss either, because, you know, you don't get to see up here, but it's happening. I'm almost 40. It's happening a little bit. I don't look like Tim Pool, and I don't look like Brian Stelter. By the way, it is a little bit rich hearing Tim Pool mock Brian Stelter for his baldness. Just saying. Let's see what they have to say here. Rogan issued an apology on Instagram on Saturday after a compilation of the podcaster frequently using the N-word on his podcast spread widely on social media. Rogan used the word more than 20 times in clips from different podcast episodes, which he said were compiled over a span of 12 years. In his apology, Rogan said, "It's the most regretful and shameful thing he's ever had to address publicly." Why? Let's actually listen to Joe and the video that they have out here.
Joe Rogan is now apologizing after videos resurfaced of him using the N-word multiple times on his podcast, Patriot Takes, which put the video together as an organization that aims to expose extremism on the far right. The video is an edited compilation of different podcast episodes, and we have to warn you, this is very disturbing to hear.
Like, you know, the thing.
Yeah. Saying the word
You've already said is just...
Holy shit, am I ever triggered by that beep that CNN had to put up there? Dude, I might have to call up Steven or John or somebody here. I don't know how I can finish the show. I heard a beep. Oh my God.
Just like
saying
she's calling you a like this boy that he's a and starts calling them word. There should be a word like especially like the word.
I can't believe there's a trigger warning over this. Like, seriously. You hear that word 25 times an hour when you're listening to terrestrial pop radio. Why are we here? Explain this to me.
That's our about he says guy and then our starts saying allowed to use the word without the word see word say and he couldn't say else.
Just unbelievable. Let's bring in CNN's chief.
Oh, shut the fuck up, Still. We're not going to listen to that. But while we were listening to that horribly edited clip of video, I pulled up Rogan's Instagram, and we're actually going to listen to him. We're going to listen to the man, and we're going to hear what it is that he has to say. It is about a 5-minute video, so we're not going to pull the whole thing, but let's go ahead and do that. So, this is not what CNN's going to show you. This is what Rogan had to say. Let's listen.
Hello, friends. I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. It's a video that's made of clips taken out of context of me of 12 years of conversations on my podcast, and it's all smushed together, and it looks fucking horrible, even to me. Now, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years, but for a long time, when I would bring that word up, like if it would come up in conversation, instead of saying the N-word, I would just say the word. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. Like that context was part of the clip we were talking about Red Fox, how Red Fox said that word on television in the 1970s and how times have changed so much since then. Or about how Richard Pryor used it as one of the titles of one of his albums. Or I was quoting a Lenny Bruce bit, or I was quoting a Paul Mooney bit, or I was talking about how Quentin Tarantino used it repeatedly in Pulp Fiction, or I was talking about how a Netflix executive, ironically, used it because he was trying to compare it to another offensive word, and he said it out loud, and they fired him. Not calling anybody or just saying the word out loud. I was also talking about how there's not another word like it in the entire English language because it's a word where only one group of people is allowed to use it, and they can use it in so many different ways. Like if a white person says that word, it's racist and toxic, but a black person can use it and it could be a punchline, it could be a term of endearment, it could be lyrics to a rap song, it could be a positive affirmation. It's a very unusual word. But it's not my word to use. I'm well aware of that now, but for years I used it in that manner. I never used it to be racist because I'm not racist, but whenever you're in a situation where you have to say, I'm not racist, you fucked up. And I clearly have fucked up.
All right, that's all we're going to listen to off of this here. Full clip, of course, is available on Rogan's Instagram himself. But I mean that there are a few things that I've got to say about that. Now, I do not use that word myself. A, because I'm on YouTube. That's a big part of it. But B, I don't believe in that word. I really don't, unless it's in a literary context. Like if I'm talking about Huck Finn or something. That is a completely different story because that you're using a direct quote. I mean, hell, when I was a kid and like when I was a little kid, young enough that saying various swear words were still not okay in front of parents. We were discussing the line in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the book, not the movie. And you know how English people talk, and Roald Dahl absolutely wrote that into his books, and even in a children's book. You know, the Oompa Loompa drank the fizzy lifting drink, and then he was headed up towards the fan. And there's Willy Wonka in the bottom, in a scene going back, yelling, "No, you have to come down here. Burp, you silly ass, burp." I know, being 10 years old and first starting to wonder if you can use that word or not. But no, and then, like I said, with that too, it's... You turn on your terrestrial pop radio, which I usually don't listen to, thankfully. Thankfully, there are great things like Spotify where I can listen to music that doesn't come from Crosby, Stills, Nash or Young or Joni Mitchell. Listen to whatever the hell else I want, and whenever I want, or go onto the YouTube and do it that way. Thank God I don't have to listen to terrestrial radio anymore, but I mean, if you listen to a lot of this pop song, it's all N-word this and that and this and that. Over and over again. Constantly. So, and there he is. It's not my word to use. It's not anybody's word. It's a word. We're all using the same goddamn words here, Joe Rogan. It's like when they go up into court and tell you, describe in your own words. They're not my words. They're everybody else's words. If I'm going to describe it in my own words, I'm going to say, ding dong, prickata, gaupata, gite, flippity, wee. Those are my own words. But for now, I'm going to use the same ones everyone else is. This is not as big of a deal as Rogan is trying to come back out and do. As people are trying to come back out and make it into. And I feel like this was done under duress, that Spotify did come out and say, hey, we had to come back and do this. And they're pulling episodes down from this as well. But it seems to be more political discussions. The episodes that they've chosen seem to be more political discussions with less desirable people. So I don't know what the end game is off of this. I really don't. It seems to me that if Spotify is pulling episodes, that means that they're in breach of contract. Because if I remember correctly, Joe's contract stated that he couldn't be censored for any reason. But we will see what happens with that. Let's keep going here. The Spotify CEO as well. From NBC News, Spotify CEO apologizes but backs Rogan after racial slur episodes are removed. From Jason Abruzzese, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek sent a letter to company employees on Sunday apologizing for the controversy surrounding Rogan, but also backing the podcaster, saying he did not believe that silencing Joe was the answer. The company was reported to have taken down about 70 episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience. Over the weekend, on Saturday, Rogan publicly apologized for instances where he used the N-word on podcasts. In a letter to Spotify employees, which a company spokesperson sent to NBC News, X said, "The comments Rogan made in the past podcast do not represent the values of this company." Well, yeah, because he wasn't a part of that company at the time. Eck wrote that Spotify has been talking to Rogan and his team about some of the content on the show, including the history of using some racially insensitive language. Following these discussions and his own reflections, he chose to remove a number of episodes from Spotify, Eck said. He also issued his own apology over the weekend. The apology adds another turn to what has become an increasingly winding saga in which Eck and Spotify have sought to protect their most popular podcaster, part of a strategy considered crucial to the company's future. In the face of growing outrage from musicians to subscribers, Eck said that Rogan made the decision to remove the episodes and agreed with the move. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't believe Rogan was a Biden voter. I believe he was a Sanders voter. While I strongly condemn what Joe has, and I agree with his decision to remove past episodes from our platform, I realize some will want more. And I want to make one point very clear. I do not believe that silencing Joe is the answer. Ack wrote, okay, that's all cool. But he has apologized now, and you've pulled episodes down. These assholes out there, these protesters, they don't want to stop. They want something to protest over. That is what they do, is they protest. That is their hobby, and sometimes their job. They protest. They don't want there to be a solution to this. They smell blood in the water because you've caved. You've bent the knee at this point. And now they're going to want more. And now they know they can protest and get more. We should have clear lines around content and take action when they are crossed. But canceling voices is a slippery slope, Eck continued. Looking at the issue more broadly, it's critical thinking and open debate that powers real and necessary progress. So that's what they're saying. But yeah, I mean, the fact that you're coming up and doing this right now. There will be another protest. There will be another demand, whether it be Rogan or maybe some other podcast that you host. Maybe one of these idiot leftoids will discover KTZed Redemption on Spotify, which I've got to go back in and up, well, not Spotify, but my Podbean subscription. Dude, changing your credit card, whether it be because it expired or because you lost your debit card, which both of those happen around the same time for me. Changing your credit card numbers is a pain in the ass. Especially if you have auto bills like Podbean or Restream that are tied to one of those two cards. 10 out of 10 do not recommend changing card number or verification code. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. It's a pain in the ass. In a letter to Spotify employees, which a company spokesman sent to NBC News, X said the comments Rogan made in the past podcast do not represent the values of this community. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Because now they know that they can protest enough and threaten to pull their subscriptions, and you're just going to cave to whatever the fuck it is that they want. So that's what we see off of that. From the New York Post. The Rock hypes Rogan's apology. Perfectly articulated. From Andrew Court. Rock Rogan 2024, much hyped uniter of the people, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, is speaking out in support of Joe Rogan, who has been repeatedly accused of spreading COVID misinformation on his wildly popular Spotify podcast. Johnson, who has previously teased and debunked a rumored run for president, took to the comment section of Rogan's Instagram on Monday, where the podcaster posted a video pledging to do better in his discussions on the coronavirus. Great stuff here, brother. Perfectly articulated. Johnson, 49, wrote to Rogan 54. Look forward to coming on one day and breaking out the tequila with you. Johnson and Rogan are two of the most popular entertainers in the country and could be a formidable force if they teamed up. Johnson boasts more than 200 million followers on Instagram, while Rogan's podcast garners more than 11 million listeners. Yeah, I enjoy Rogan from time to time, so I'm not a regular listener, and I do follow The Rock. I think he's a good guy. I think he's good with charity, and I try to do more charity every chance I get. And I like The Rock because I know that it's one of the big things that he does. So yeah, I do follow him. But that's what we see coming off of that. Who it wasn't good enough for? From Fox News, Joy Behar rejects Joe Rogan's apology following a podcast criticism. I don't know that he can be reformed. From Brandon Gillespie. Joy Behar, co-host of ABC's liberal daytime gabfest The View, is rejecting comedian Joe Rogan's apology following the criticism he has received from various celebrity musicians over some of the content in his podcast discussions concerning the coronavirus pandemic. Who the fuck is Nicki Minaj? During a Monday segment focused on Rogan's podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, Behar claimed that this wasn't the first time the former UFC fighter has been chastised before going back to his craziness and declared that she wasn't sure that he could be reformed. You guys are talking to a guy about, not two, you guys are talking about a guy who became famous for telling people, hey, are you sure that you don't want to eat this buffalo penis? Look at all the money that's sitting here waiting for you. You could eat a buffalo penis. I bet you could eat a buffalo penis on air. Co-host Whoopi Goldberg began the segment by playing an Instagram video posted by Rogan, showing him apologizing to anyone he might have pissed off for the content in his podcast. She also noted Spotify CEO Daniel Ek's commitment to having measures in place to address disinformation concerning the pandemic, following a number of artists, including Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, requesting their content be removed from the platform because of Rogan. So, Behar, no, he can't be reformed. That's what we see coming off of that. Shapiro got into this as well. Okay, gang. Nobody targeting Rogan right now gives two damns about anything he said in the past. Probably true, actually. This is all just an opportunity for activists to destroy a guy who doesn't carry water for those with institutional power and whose audience dwarfs their own. It's that simple, okay, gang? Alright, so go buy my Birch Gold and buy my product and go to the Daily Wire. And I'll tell you more about this right now, but nobody gives a damn about Rogan. This is my wife. She's smoking hot. So that's what they had to say about that. And I can't believe I'm about to say these words out loud. I think Ben is right on this. Holy shit, that was weird. I just said I think Ben Shapiro was right. That was fucking weird. Are we in a time warp somewhere here? But yeah, I mean, a lot of this is monkey see, monkey do. A lot of people heard, a couple people complain about the fact that Rogan is in there. They heard somewhere down the line that, oh, well, Rogan will come back and he'll talk to Stefan Molyneux and he'll talk to Alex Jones. He must be evil. These people have got to be right. He must be evil. Let's get him taken off of Spotify. I would say that probably, I would be more generous to the percentages. People like Ben here will say that 95% of the people that are targeting Rogan right now have never heard a minute of Rogan podcast, other than the clip that was circulated on The View, or the selectively edited clips of him talking to Bobby Malone and Peter McCullough. Other than the selectively edited clips there, like they've never gone to Spotify and said, hey, I wonder what's going on with this Joe Rogan podcast. Maybe I'll have a listen to it so I can judge it for myself rather than just taking what everyone else is saying. No. And like I say, I'm going to be more generous than Ben is. Ben would say that that's 95% of the people have never listened to the podcast themselves. I would say it's probably 60. 60% of the people that are doing this have never sought out, have never listened to a minute of the Joe Rogan podcast proper, just what's been selectively edited back through. But they're looking for this, and yes, like I say, right now it's fashionable in these particular circles to come back out and go after somebody. It's fashionable to do it. Hey, oh, you hate Rogan? Hey, I hate Rogan too. He shouldn't have a platform. Know nothing about his platform otherwise. Know nothing about his show otherwise. But that's what they come forward for. So that's what I have on the Rogan thing. It's just, there's so much going on with it. And so much of it wouldn't need to be done. Like, if some of these people would actually sit down and listen to either the offending episode proper of the Rogan podcast, or go back and find an episode with a personality that they like. I mean, he's had so many people on. I just listened to the fucking Carrot Top episode. I haven't heard about Carrot Top since the early 2000s. And a Family Guy episode. That guy is funny as fuck too, by the way. If you want an introduction episode to Rogan that has nothing to do with the controversy, I recommend that one. Because he just sits there and talks. And I will admit that in the midst of this controversy, I've listened to more Rogan than I have in my life otherwise. Mostly because I've kind of split ways with other people's podcasts because I've got real estate lessons to take and, I do this all the time. But that's what we see coming off of that. Let's shift gears here. Let's go talk about Canada, the Canadian truckers. From Disclosed TV, to start off with, just in, GoFundMe has deleted Canada's Freedom Convoy fundraiser for violating its terms, stating the peaceful demonstration has become an occupation now. I would love to see the standards by which they did that, other than, the governor that doesn't, or the prime minister that doesn't like us, he's the one that's calling it an occupation. And I want to see what their actual definition is of an occupation. Is it just because the government official said it was? Because I look at things like the siege of my hometown. I look at things like that and I say, that was an occupation. People coming in from out of town, blacked out license plates, buses, cars, trucks, from all over the country to come in. Or even coming in from other places outside of the state, Milwaukee, places like that, down in Illinois, down in Chicago. That's an occupation. Now, yes, if this is an occupation, I don't believe either one of them are an occupation. It was a protest. It very much was a protest. The January 6th Selfie Fest was a protest. The Black Lives Matter riots were protests that had descended into rioting. And yes, in the shame of Kenosha, we lost a lot of historic buildings, but they did have the First Amendment right to gather. They did not have the right to damage property, and the property owners had the Second Amendment right to protect their property, but they didn't do it. But, just for the people who gathered, yes, that was a protest. I didn't agree with the terms of the protest, but that was a protest. And what's happening in Canada, that is a protest as well. So, but now they're calling it an occupation because the person that they're protesting against doesn't like it. And he happens to have some sort of political power. Let's grab one from Instagram right away, too. Ricky Lynn says, if you donated, your money was stolen. In a screen cap from Disclosed TV, once again, just in. GoFundMe has deleted Canada's Freedom Convoy fundraiser for violating its terms, stating the peaceful protest has become an occupation now. $9 million in funds to be sent to credible charities. Now, as far as this goes, we'll look at the time stamps here. This is at 6:07 p.m. on February 4th. This was at 3:37 p.m. also on February 4th. So to me, it looks like this is the initial post that they did on Disclose. This last part either wound up not being true or not completely true, and they deleted this tweet and then went back to this one because they both came on the same day, and depending on time zone, either 2 to 5.5 hours apart. And also looking directly at the minute marker. That's what told me that these were probably two different tweets, because one is at 37 and the other one is at 07. So, yeah, it looks like this is in. It does look like, and I've looked at a little bit of stuff that's going on around this. It appears that GoFundMe did shut the charity down, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And they issued a notice, which is weird for GoFundMe, because typically, if either you don't claim the money, like when I went through with the Turns of Pages Productions fundraiser, I was getting emails all the time. You have to set out a disbursement account to come and take the money for. Otherwise, we'll return your money back to the donors automatically. They didn't talk about taking the money and giving it out to another charity. That was their term, is if you don't do this, if you don't set up a place for us to disperse the money to, we will just give the money back to the people who donated. And then I set up the disbursement and took the money. Thank you guys, by the way. We will get the Give, Send, Go up and ready to go in just a moment. But that's their automatic term, and it's the same thing with many other fundraisers at this point. We had to shut this down. You're getting your money back. I've had that notice before because I tossed a couple bucks into the Matt Walsh one. The Matt Walsh and AOC's Abuela one. I tossed a few bucks in that just for fun. I think it was 10. Yeah, I tossed a $10 bill into that one. And I got my $10 bill back. I didn't have to go and request it. It just came back. Boom. It's in my hand, ready to go. But according to this, it looks like if you want your money back from the Canadian Trucker fundraiser, you have to go back and request it. Looks like they are walking this back. It looks like they are trying to make this right, but we'll see what happens with this. Let's grab one from Fox Business. GoFundMe backtracks on redistributing money for Canadian truckers under the threat of fraud investigation. From Tim Nerozzi. Did I have another one that go before this? No, I didn't. Facing a potential fraud investigation by the state of Florida, GoFundMe reversed a decision to redistribute money given by thousands of donors to the Canadian Freedom Convoy protesting COVID-19 regulations. On Friday, the crowdfunding platform GoFundMe froze the convoy's official campaign, claiming law enforcement convinced the company that the convoy had become violent and unlawful. This is your violent and unlawful protest. Yeah, that's your violent protest. Right there. GoFundMe encouraged donors to submit a refund form and said that any funds not properly returned to donors would be donated to a charity chosen by the Freedom Convoy, Planned Parenthood or BLM. Within hours, however, GoFundMe walked back the refund applications, instead announcing it would be refunding the donors automatically, which has been their policy for literally every fundraiser other than this one. Literally every fundraiser other than this one, that was their policy. Ron DeSantis said that he would investigate the company, accusing them of fraud. That's actually true. I mean, if that's the standard, and that's the thing, you would have to go down through terms of service and actually see if that's their right to do, to redistribute out to another charity. Because you're not putting money in just for charity. You're putting money in for a specific charity. And like I say, I got my $10 bill back from the AOC fundraiser. From the Abuela fundraiser. GoFundMe supports peaceful protests, and we believe that the intention of Freedom Convoy 2022 fundraiser, when it was first created, now we have evidence from law enforcement that previously peaceful demonstrations has become an occupation with police reports of violence and other unlawful activity. GoFundMe announced there's been little to no reports of documented violence at the protest. But do you know who did have a GoFundMe? BLM in Kenosha. But of course, I mean, if you think about it, there were no reports of violence or anything in Kenosha either. Unless the person was evil and white supremacist and had an AR-15. GoFundMe also drew the ire of Texas AG Ken Paxton, who stated on social media that he would be launching a fraud investigation. And I mean, for these states to come back and out, like the U.S. DOJ and Merrick Garland they're never going to investigate GoFundMe for this. It's never, ever, ever going to happen. They are never going to investigate anything off of this, but the states are, because their constituents are being affected by this. I'm sure a large number of people in Florida and Texas donated to that. I don't know why. For God's sakes, you shouldn't be using GoFundMe for anything. But they looked at this and said, oh, GoFundMe, that's the one that's always out there. Well, we'll use that one there, and we'll donate to this GoFundMe. And they did. And then they were disappointed. But yeah, I mean, if your money is getting pulled from you, going to a different charity, one that you don't support, especially, like I said, if it's Planned Parenthood Fund or BLM, that's fraud. Because you've put money in at that point in your name to something you don't believe in. I love this over here. Most Americans want student loan payment pause extended until 2023, poll shows. No, the Democrats behind the Your Money segment over here want this extended out until somebody else is holding the bag. But they'll just take it in small increments. They don't want Biden holding the bag when all those payments come back out. But that's what we see coming off of that. From the New York Post. Elon Musk. GoFundMe. Professional thieves for withholding $10 million from anti-vax rally. And of course, it had to be anti-vax. It's not anti-mandate, it's anti-vax. From Rich Calder. Tesla founder Elon Musk slammed GoFundMe for hypocrisy after the fundraising site cut ties with a convoy of Canadian truckers who oppose vaccine mandates. Double standard? Quipped Musk on Twitter while sharing a screenshot of a June 2020 tweet GoFundMe posted in support of Seattle's lawless CHOP, or the Capitol Hill Occupy protest that used to be the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, until they realized that they couldn't get government services if they were an autonomous zone. We hate the government. We're going to form our own government out here, but please keep sending ambulances. Let's see. Where riots broke out and police were not permitted to enter. He also called GoFundMe professional thieves. Thousands of truckers in the Freedom Convoy rolled into Ottawa on January 29th, many of them blocking roads outside of Parliament buildings, honking loudly and brandishing Canadian flags and "Fuck Trudeau" banners. GoFundMe blocked the release of almost $10 million in donations to the group earlier on Friday in connection with the promotion of violence and harassment during the Ottawa protest. We now have evidence from law enforcement that the previously peaceful demonstration has become an occupation, with police reports of violence and other unlawful activity, GoFundMe wrote in a statement. Donors have until February 19th to ask for a refund that appears to have been changed. The rest of the money the group raised would be allocated to credible and established charities chosen by Freedom Convoy organizers, the site said. On Wednesday, Facebook took down a page created by U.S. truckers who were planning to ride from California to D.C. for a similar protest. We'll be talking about that in just a second. Dude, stop using big tech for this. If you really want to organize and protest and you're not on the left, stop using big tech for any of this. But that's what they say coming off of that. From the Daily Mail, GoFundMe doled out cash to Capitol Hill Occupy protests in Seattle, where businesses were looted and vandalized, despite freezing $8 million to a Freedom Convoy. Canada truckers hit with $9.8 million lawsuit issued by fed-up Ottawa residents for mental distress. But puppy, protests are not supposed to be comfortable, puppy. Unless they're railway protests or protests against what we tell you to protest for. Because then they have to be comfortable, okay, puppy? From Alistair Talbot, Michelle Thompson for DailyMail.com. GoFundMe canceled a fundraiser for truckers protesting Canada's vaccine mandates despite promoting money-raising efforts for the deadly Capitol Hill occupied protests. The Freedom Convoy campaign, which raised nearly $8 million for truckers, was nixed Friday by GoFundMe for violating its terms of service, which prohibits the promotion of violence and harassment. Conversely, it's actively endorsed campaigns in 2020 for a CHOP participant. Despite active riots in Seattle, GoFundMe retweeted a Bloomberg article featuring a farmer, Marcus Henderson, who started a garden to feed the protesters, and it worked out fantastically! In a community with no police, this farmer is feeding people and bringing them closer together, the tweet said, with a link to the fundraiser. Learn how you can support Marcus's mission within the CHOP. GoFundMe also allowed numerous BLM-related fundraisers, some of which still remain active, that strive to raise funds for protective gear and medical supplies for protesters in the Pacific Northwest. As well as missing out on donations to support their efforts, Canadian truckers were also hit with an $8.9 million lawsuit by an Ottawa resident who claims their protests are affecting the quality of life in the nation's capital, which, given the fact that they went with $8.9 million, tells me that he looked at this, he said, hey, I can go get easy money off of this. And now he's come back and find a way to get that GoFundMe money. During the Seattle protests, GoFundMe allowed a number of BLM-related fundraisers, some of which remain active, that strive to raise funds for the protective gear, medical supplies. Yeah, we saw that already. Tesla CEO Elon Musk called the fundraising platform out last week for its perceived hypocrisy because of the double standard. During the 2020 gathering, Lorenzo Anderson, 19, was shot dead on June 20th. While visiting the protest, just days later, on June 29th, 2 teenage boys were shot, one fatally near the protest zone. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, resident unable to sleep from the constant hawking of the horns by the Freedom Convoy truckers who have shut down the Canadian capital for more than a week is suing the protest organizers, as GoFundMe said it will refund the $8 million donated to the group. Zexi Lee filed a $9.8 million lawsuit in Ontario Superior Court on Friday, seeking damages for emotional and mental distress, citing ongoing headaches, sleeping difficulties, and difficulty concentrating and interference with quiet enjoyment of her home. Yeah, I don't know that would be the road that you want to go down. So that's what they say off of that. What else do we have? Yeah, we watched the video. Violent protest. From the Blaze. He's a coward. Did Twitter mob just send GoFundMe CEO, who nixed Canadian trucker fundraiser, into hiding? Let's find out from Blaze TV staff. Looks like GoFundMe CEO Tim Cadogan can't take the heat after his crowdfunding platform shut down the Freedom Convoy 2022 fundraiser for Canadian truckers and refused to distribute the reported $10 million raised on their behalf. Cadogan apparently decided to lock down his Twitter account, which is such a shame because he now might miss out on all the nice things folks are saying about him. And there he is. He is protected. What's the matter, Tim Cadogan? You don't want to man up to your decisions? Mark C says criminal can't stand the heat. Funny how that works. Philip Jacobs says pussy can't stand behind his decision. Zeeth Bear says he's a coward who knows he exists and his company exists at the whim of the psychotic progressives that run everything. He took a ticket a long time ago and now he has to do their bidding. Coward punk. Congo Jones says he's a tool. Hope he and his company go under. A series of symbols that I can't read. It says, if he believed he was doing the right thing, he wouldn't be hiding like this. And Dr. Rachel Lindbergh says he's in hiding, go figure. On the most recent episode of You Are Here, Blaze TV hosts Elijah Schaefer and Sydney Watson discussed why those in power seemed so desperate to stop the Freedom Convoy movement, including Justin Trudeau, who, after smearing the truckers as extremists, went into hiding. And that's the other thing that goes along with Trudeau and everything else with this. So yeah, I mean, this guy's in hiding. He's out. He's gone. He has no idea. But I mean, look at what you have going on here. And yes, I do understand the fact that there are, 30 million people in Canada. There are maybe 3 million people down here in Ottawa. And yeah, that's still probably 10% of Canada, and that's still a minority. But I mean, is this a small minority to you? I mean, just the sea of people there. And of course you can't get drone footage anywhere, but the sea of people. That's amazing. And that's still probably a minority, but that's not a small minority. Let's grab one from Rebel News. Not green check verified. Do take with the appropriate grain of salt. Breaking. Man charged in Winnipeg car attack on convoy protest is radical far-left anarchist. From Sheila Gunn Reid. The man charged in Winnipeg for an attack on a convoy protest is a radical far-left anarchist. Okay. He's a protester. He's not an anarchist. He wants the government to take over more of your life. He is not an anarchist if he's far-left. Police, however, are still treating the incident as a hit and run rather than a hate crime. 4 people taking part in the convoy protest in Manitoba's capital city were injured and rushed to the hospital after a car plowed into a crowd, which you've never heard about, by the way. The man alleged to be the driver of the vehicle, David Zegarek, was taken into custody an hour later after a brief struggle with police. A white Jeep can be seen hitting one person before accelerating and hitting 3 more. But this didn't make the mainstream news. Yeah, that didn't make the mainstream news for some reason. I wonder why that is. The crowd had gathered in Winnipeg in support of the ongoing peaceful protest by truckers and their allies in Ottawa, where they're demanding an end to the pinko pox restrictions and vaccine mandates. Police have not said if the attack was politically motivated hate crime, instead charging Zegarek with 4 counts of assault with a weapon, 2 counts of dangerous operations of a conveyance causing bodily harm, dangerous operation of a conveyance, 2 counts of failure to stop after an accident, knowing the driver was reckless, and failing to stop at the scene of an accident ×2.
I'm Constable Rob Carver, Public Information Officer with the Winnipeg Police Service. Just one matter to talk about. Yesterday evening at about 9:10 p.m., Winnipeg police were advised of a motor vehicle collision near Broadway and Memorial Boulevard. The initial information was that a westbound Jeep Patriot had driven through a group of protesters that were part of the Freedom Convoy at the Legislative Grounds. The Jeep then fled west, ultimately going down Portage Avenue, where numerous witnesses reported it traveling at high rates of speed and passing through red lights. With the assistance of the RCMP, Winnipeg Police Service officers were able to stop the vehicle in the 4800 block of Portage Avenue at approximately 10:30. The lone male driver was arrested after a brief struggle. The Jeep struck 4 adult males in total. 3 sustained minor injuries that did not require medical attention, and that's actually not quite accurate. They were treated at the scene by Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, and the 4th was treated in hospital and released. As a result, male from Headingley, Manitoba faces charges of assault with a weapon ×4, dangerous operation of a conveyance caused bodily harm ×2, dangerous operation of a conveyance, failed to stop after accident knowing that the driving was reckless ×2.
So, and I mean, we read the charges in and of this beforehand, but I mean, and that's the thing too. It's like Darrell Brooks didn't get popped with a hate crime either, but let's say Heather Heyer. Say her name again because that was a hate crime. Because an evil far-righter plowed his car into a crowd while he's being chased by a professor swinging a bike lock. But there again, do keep in mind, they call the far lefter in this article an anarchist, which is like the opposite of what the far left is at this point. And it is Rebel News. They're not green check verified. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Moving into our country here, Facebook removes Freedom Convoy page of truckers against vax mandates from Joshua Rhett Miller. A Freedom Facebook page, organized by a protest by U.S. truckers against vaccine mandates, has been removed by the social media giant, riling long haulers blasting censorship at its finest, according to a report. The Freedom Convoy of truckers, following the lead of their Canadian counterparts, plan to drive from California to D.C. in opposition to the vaccine rules nationwide. The group's Convoy to D.C. 2022 page on Facebook, however, was removed Wednesday for violating policies around QAnon, Fox News reported. Trucker Jeremy Johnson, who set up the Facebook group, said his personal profile was also removed, leading him to contact a civil rights attorney to figure out his next move. They like to silence people that speak the truth, Johnson told Fox News. Brian Brace, who helped organize the U.S. trucker protest, said that he was troubled by the alleged censorship without further clarification from Facebook's parent company, Meta. There are a couple of the trucks that are going through Canada right now. I have to laugh about that, Brace told Fox News on Wednesday. They actually offered the administrators to remove the content and then request a review again. They didn't even give that option. Mike Landis, another long hauler involved in the movement, said the protest has been a long time coming and that Americans are fatigued by ongoing government overreach in the form of pandemic-related mandates. The presence of that amount of people shows that they're unhappy with what's going on. Is a good way to hopefully get their attention, Landis told Fox News. Now, I can tell you right now, this would be a little bit more difficult to do in the percentage scale that they saw in Canada. Now, for what they're going to do with what they have for owner-operators, they are going to most likely get more trucks into Washington, D.C. But the tiny minority fallacy is going to come off of that as well because, it's, again, a lot of the people who are going to be at the protest in D.C. are going to be vaccinated. I can tell you that before anything else happens. I can tell you that's going to be a thing. But what I can also tell you is that there are a lot more company drivers in this country than there are owner-operators. And I don't know how the ratio shakes out with Canada, but I know here there are a lot more company drivers. Now, there are a lot more drivers here. So even with the percentages being possibly different at this point, that's still going to be a lot of trucks in DC if this actually goes. But, you know, they're trying to keep it from organized. And here's the other side. Like I say, if you've got wrongthink, if you don't think the way that your meta overlords want you to think, why the hell would you ever organize anything on Facebook? Why in God's name would you ever organize on Facebook? But that's what they say off of that. And yeah, actually, I want to go back and address that because Ron Hilton says there are approximately 5 million registered semis in the U.S. There are. You are correct. But a lot of them are registered to company. And like I say, I don't know what the percentage is of owner-operator versus company driver. I don't. I know that it's probably smaller on owner-operator than it is, especially after the big recessions that we've had. Because starting up a truck company costs a bunch of money. A bunch of money with a capital B-U-N-C-H. A bunch of money. And there aren't a lot of people that are in my generation, unless they've been working at it for a while, that are going to have that kind of money. And they do make a decent amount of money as a company driver. But the thing with the company driver is that company, with their Qualcomm in that vehicle, or whatever the hell they use for their onboard diagnostics. Where I used to work, we always use Qualcomm for, not onboard diagnostics, but electronic logs. That company, with their electronic logbook in that truck, are not going to let that truck go anywhere near that protest. And if they do, if it does go out there, if they defy their orders, the company would be well within their rights to report that truck as stolen. And potentially get the company driver in a lot of trouble. Now, there again, that comes down to the idea of the owner-operator, the people that own their truck, that can possibly take some vacation time, not really vacation time, but not take loads for a few weeks, throw some fuel in the truck, throw some diesel into the truck, and drive it down to DC. But yeah, those company drivers, they'll fold with the federal government when they get threatened with taxes and a bad time, which a lot of these owner-operators are going to do as well. When they get threatened with raised taxes, they're going to say, oh, you know what? No, that truck, that company truck, you can't bring that to DC. In fact, I'm going to route all of your loads around and away from DC. So that's what we see coming off of that. From the Hill. Excuse me. This is an op-ed from the Hill also, so again, no green check verification for this, but interesting enough to keep on for purposes. U.S. trucker convoys coming. Joe Biden will ignore the protests at his peril, from Liz Peek. The views expressed by contributors are their own and not the view of the Hill. The views expressed by the contributors are also not the views of Turns of Pages Productions or Contemporary with J. Edgar. As hard as it is to imagine, President Biden's political fortunes are about to get worse. The massive trucker convoy that crossed Canada to protest against the country's new vaccine mandates will almost certainly be replicated in the U.S. and will bring with it huge headaches for the Brandon White House. Uncle Sniff and Diddle pretends to be the champion of the little guy. He claims to support blue-collar workers. Truckers are exactly the kind of folks Biden is meant to embrace, but he will not do that. The drivers protesting the vaccine mandates have already been portrayed by the liberal media as right-wing zealots and science deniers, which is only one notch above climate deniers. A Facebook group organizing the U.S. convoy that had amassed 130,000 members has been tossed off the social media platform amid allegations that the movement was being promoted by right-wing extremists, which the organizers deny. Brandon will not dare stand up for the truckers, and yet if he dismisses them as a small fringe minority, as Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau recently did with the Freedom Convoy, drivers up north, they could get mad. They could, if pushed, call for a sick-out of America's vital truckers. Whatever supply chain problem, and that's the other side of this. We'll touch on that in just a second. Whatever supply chain problems we've had would pale before the catastrophe that would unfold if tens of thousands of truckers simply walked off the job for a day or two. Imagine what would happen to transportation costs and inflation. The convoy protests would come at an awkward time. The public has had it with the government's draconian and largely ineffective measures to combat the pinko pox. Polling shows that they're ready to move on. They're emboldened by a growing body of evidence indicating that restrictions and rules promulgated by our government under both President Trump and Biden were a mistake. They're emboldened by a growing body of evidence indicating that restrictions and rules promulgated by our government under both presidents Orange Man and Brandon were a mistake. A new study from Johns Hopkins University shows that shutting down the country reduced the mortality by only 0.2%, while causing devastating effects on the economy and drastic social ills. Further, the research suggests that lockdowns are ill-founded and should be rejected as a pandemic policy instrument. Well, they reduced it by 0.2% though. If it saves just one life, you monster! And the article goes on to talk about Rogan and everything else off of this. I want to focus on the trucker convoy though, that specific part of this, because that I think is going to be the important part. When we look at this, when we go on to this, and when we see where this goes, because yes, according to the live chat, what is it? 350,000 owner-operators, which that, and I've driven in DC too, by the way. 350,000 semis in Washington, D.C., or let's not even say all of them, because some of them are going to agree with the Brandon administration. Let's say 30,000. 30,000 owner-operators decide to get together behind the scenes. And then mainstream media starts to cover it, and maybe we get 20,000 more add to that. 50,000 owner-operators in Washington, D.C. If you've never driven into Washington, D.C., A, number one, don't. But B, I mean, look at a map. Look at how narrow those streets are. And if you put 50,000 trucks into Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. is effectively shut down. It's effectively not going to happen. And from what I could tell from the highway system and the bridge system into D.C., you don't even have to go into Washington. You can shut down essentially 4 bridges and 2 highways. And DC is shut down as well, so keep that in mind as they go along with that. But the other side of that is the sick out. What this author, Liz Peek, had to say about that. The sick out. Even if these company drivers, and some of them are day cabbers. Hold on, just a second. I don't know if it's allergies because we had a warm break or because I still have some of the remnants of the coop sitting up on my nose, but man, you know, you just get up in the morning and the runny nose starts, and then as soon as you start talking, it's right there. So, and there again, it got really, really warm over the past couple days, and I see pine tree, like right out that window there, so that's definitely a possibility, but yeah, I apologize for the unprofessionalism of getting up there. But I did want to talk just a second about what Liz Peek had to say about a sick out, because that's an important thing to think about. The sick out. I said that of course, you cannot get the company drivers going down into DC. Their electronic logbooks won't let that happen. Their owners, if they did try to do something like that, would report the truck stolen. A lot of these guys would get felonies if they did that as company drivers. But they can do a sick out. Oh, boss, I don't feel good. Now, there's some effect to that, because if you're over the road, if I understand correctly, you have the option to stop for a couple days if you're over the road because of illness, like you can't operate the vehicle. I don't know, I've never been down that side, but I also know that a lot of your company drivers like that are day cabbers, which means they don't sleep in their cab. They come in, they pull 1 or 2 loads for, it depends on the company, sometimes 8, sometimes 10, sometimes 14 hours. Sometimes they get their full 14 for the day on the logbook. They get out of their truck, they park it in the yard, and they go home. They're home every night because they're day cab drivers. And there are regional drivers like that too. 20,000 day cab drivers across the country is going to have a significant impact on the flow of goods, especially if it's for 1 or 2 days. So there are ways for some of these truckers who aren't in an owner-operator position to turn around and still make their protest heard. Alright, but that's what we see off of that. Let's shift gears off of this. We've got a few other things to get to. Do I want this here? No, I don't want this here. So this was brought to us. I'm not sure how long the segment is that we're supposed to do here. But this was brought to us by our friend Jopper9 last week. She put the clip in and told us to go off for this. Because we talked about the fact that, yes, this particular politician was being pressed. I believe this is Secretary of Defense, spokesperson Ned Price, the State Department press briefing, being hit by reporters. Let's have a listen.
From the PRC, including in the context of the UN earlier this week, is that the PRC, like us, like just about every other country around the world, would prefer to see a diplomatic solution to the crisis that Russia has needlessly provoked.
Before we leave Ukraine, when was the last time the Secretary spoke to the foreign minister, the Ukrainian foreign minister?
To the Ukrainian foreign minister, it has been, he spoke to him just after we left Geneva. That was 10 days ago.
Okay, but not since not this week, in other words.
I'm not aware of a call this week, but we do regularly engage with our Ukrainian counterparts.
All right, and then one last thing. Like, I'm not buying into Russian propaganda, but I'm also not going to buy into an accusation. Yes, you are. You're saying the proof is that I just said it. So let me just appeal to you on behalf of all of us, and the American people, and the people of the world, and the Russian people, and the Ukrainian people. One piece of evidence to suggest that the Russians are planning to use crisis actors to stage a false mass casualty event to use as a pretext. Just one piece, okay? And not you or Kirby or Jen or John Feiner or Jake saying this is what is so, and then you turning around and saying, well, because we said it, it's a fact.
So let me
piece of verifiable evidence.
Let me make a couple broad points, and I acknowledge this will probably be unsatisfactory to you in the moment. But here's what I think you know, what I certainly know, what everyone here knows. There are 100,000 Russian troops encircling Ukraine right now, approaching Ukraine's borders, close to the borders. There are thousands of Russian troops, with the potential for some 30,000 Russian troops.
I'm sure that they're not encircling Ukraine right now, because I'm pretty sure that Poland would have something to say about that.
Troops to stream in to Belarus. All of these forces are positioned, could well be positioned, if Putin makes that decision, to engage on Ukraine in a coordinated assault. We also know that the Russians have resorted to these tactics in the past, have developed a remarkably similar playbook in 2014, amassed troops, engaged in 2014, it is a historical fact, engaged in disinformation and propaganda to paint Ukraine as the aggressor, fabricated a pretext for an invasion, and went in. So with what we know from 8 years ago, with what we have seen, you and I both have seen, everyone has seen, with what we have heard 8 years ago, in the ensuing 8 years, and in recent weeks, it seems to me that it should not be outlandish that the Russians may be engaging in this activity
fine, but not
again.
Being outlandish doesn't mean that you have any proof that it's happening.
The second point,
or being planned.
Ned,
you can't just. All of that may very well be true. Probably is true. Okay, but it doesn't provide any evidence of what you're alleging now, which is that they're planning this fake mass casualty event with quote unquote crisis actors, which is something that in the U.S., we rarely hear, outside of the kind of, nutty conspiracy theory crowd.
Well, to be clear, we're not alleging what the United States is doing. This is information available to us, what the Russians are up to. I understand your point, but I just want to...
You do? Because, I mean, you're treading into serious waters here. And if you can't provide any evidence other than, well, I said so, and so it's a fact, that's a problem.
Matt, there's a second point. This is derived from intelligence in which we have confidence. In which we have confidence.
The
otherwise,
same confidence you had in
WMD.
WMD.
Otherwise, we would not be making it public in the way we are. But here's the other point. Intelligence and evidence. These are two.
All right, I can't listen to this idiot and not know what he's talking about anymore. But just listen to it. He's amazed that somebody would come out there and actually ask him a question. Ron got it right. He has no idea what to do when they don't just bow down and say, "Oh yes, press. This is what it is, and you need to just accept it because we have a D after our name, and our leader is not evil and orange and evil." That was perfect, and I'm glad that we got to see it. And then we can, I think this is the same. Let's see what came out of Posobiec's Twitter.
Thanks.
Yeah, same one. That's the same clip. I'm going to hold on to that, though, because I might use that instead of the YouTube one. If we talk about this tonight, which I don't know if we're going to be able to or not. But that's what we see off of that. Hey, Chuck Schumer got obliterated online over embarrassing gaffe about the racial makeup of the Supreme Court. From Carlos Garcia. Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer faced some online ridicule and mockery after he made a verifiably false claim about the historic racial makeup of the Supreme Court. Schumer was assailing Republicans in a speech on the floor of the U.S. Senate where he claimed that the highest court in the land had only white male justices until 1981. Until 1981, this powerful body, the Supreme Court, was all white men. Imagine, America wasn't all white men until 1981, or ever, Schumer said. Under President Biden and this Senate majority, we're talking historic steps to make the courts look more like the country they serve by confirming highly qualified, diverse nominees, Schumer continued. Critics of Schumer took to social media to blast him for erasing the historic career of Thurgood Marshall, who served on the Supreme Court for 24 years, after being nominated by Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1967. Marshall was the first Black American to serve on the Supreme Court. Whoever wrote this speech is in deep trouble. Thurgood Marshall was appointed in 1967, the first ever African-American justice, read one tweet. The Senate Majority Leader and a speechwriter erasing Thurgood Marshall from the history books is not something I had on my bingo card for today, joked NRSC Communications Director Chris Hartline. Diversity on the Supreme Court is such a hugely important issue to Chuck Schumer that he doesn't even know about Thurgood Marshall, read another tweet. Out for getting Sarah Marshall, in for getting Thurgood Marshall, joked another critic. I like that one. Nice. So, good job, Chuck U. Schumer, on that one. Maybe do a little bit of research before you go back and rail against your opponents. All right, from the Hill. RNC Committee advances resolution to censure Cheney and Kinzinger. From Olaf V. Maheen Oshin and Tal Axelrod. Before I read into this, I'm actually against this. I don't think this was a good idea. But let's read it and I'll tell you why. Members of the Republican National Committee Resolutions Committee on Thursday unanimously passed a resolution to censor Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, though they declined to call for Cheney and Kinzinger to be expelled from the House Republican Conference. I think Cheney already wasn't she? By the GOP of Wyoming, I think. The resolution's passage was confirmed to the Hill by two sources familiar with the matter. The RNC's full body will likely vote to approve the censure on Friday after its winter meeting. The resolution criticizes Cheney's and Kinzinger's involvement in the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Selfie Fest, on which they are the only two Republican members. This is not about them being anti-Trump. Harmeet Dillon, a National Committee member from California, and one of the members of the resolution, told Politico, "There are plenty of other people in the party who are anti-Trump whose names don't appear on the resolution. These two took specific action to defy party leadership." Dillon also said that RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel spoke in favor of the resolution as passed by the Resolutions Committee, Politico reported. Look, there are people out there who are going to try to tell you that anything the RNC is doing has become Trump. This is the party of Trump now. Anybody in the RNC is nothing but a cult member. They're in the cult of Trump. They're in the cult of the Orange Man. It's all a cult at this point. So with these people doing this, it's so horrible. And they're going to come out and they're going to censure Liz Cheney because she dared to stand up and be a strong, empowered woman and stand up against the evil Orange Man who is both evil and orange and evil. And Adam Kinzinger, who took the brave step of not only voting to impeach, but also being on the Select Committee. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of reality. Something like this gave all kinds of ammunition to the progressive left in this country because on the surface, and even down when you look into it, it looks like they're right. It does look like this is the party of Trump. That the masters of the RNC are absolutely just doing Trump's bidding and taking care of Trump's enemies. Now, I would have considered this censure to be warranted had there already not been punitive actions taken against Cheney, at least. I don't know if Kinzinger has actually had a punitive action taken against him by his voters, but I know that his district is disappearing after the census in Illinois. They stretched a number of districts out a long way to go and make that big swath of land disappear. Kinzinger doesn't have a district to go home to. I think he is going to run in one of these surrounding districts. I don't know which one right now. I believe he's going to run in one of them, and I believe he's going to get his ass blasted for it. But with Cheney having already been censured by the Wyoming GOP, the voters that she actually answers to, and with Kinzinger losing his district and very, very likely not being able to be reelected, I'd say it's probably a 65% chance that if he runs, depending on which district it is, that he doesn't make it, that he gets taken out by a Democrat. He'll probably win the primary in whichever district he does, but that he gets taken out by a Democrat in the general. That's probably 65% right now for Adam Kinzinger. These people have already been punished by their voters. There is no way Liz Cheney is getting reelected in Wyoming after this. And she's already got a censure from the Wyoming GOP. The actual party, the people that she represents. Her actual job, you know. So this was a step too far for me. And again, I will say, and possibly for Kinzinger, because I don't know that he's actually been punished by his voters other than losing his district. But as far as Cheney goes, that no. This really does look like sour grapes. And that this is the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, coming out to get rid of Trump's enemies so that he can turn around and run free and clear. So that's what I see off of that. Let's grab one that came in from the Discord. Thank you to Ron Helton. Vitamin D deficiency linked to severe deadly COVID-19 study. from Mimi Win Lai. NTD is not a publication that I'm familiar with. I did not come up on Green Check Verify, so again, take this at your own measure with a grain of salt. The appropriate grain of salt, do your own research, of course. Which you should be doing that with the Green Check Verified articles anyway, but I do try to stay with Green Check Verified so that our political enemies out there can't come out and say, this guy is a racist, and all he's doing is taking articles from friendly sources like the Daily Wire and the Daily Stormer and the Blaze. That's the reason I go with Green Check. People who are vitamin D deficient are 14 times more likely to have severe pinko pox and to die from the disease, according to research from one scientist in Israel. The peer-reviewed study, published in the journal PLOS1, looked at vitamin D levels before a person contracted the pinko pox and the disease's severity and mortality. Researchers from Azrieli Faculty in Medicine of Bar Ilan University and the Galilee Medical Center found that patients with vitamin D deficiency, less than 20 nanograms per milliliter, were 14 times more likely to have a severe critical case of the pinko fucking pox compared to those with levels of vitamin D at more than 40 nanograms per milliliter. Amil Dror, the lead researcher of the study, said results of the study suggest it's advisable to maintain normal levels of vitamin D. This will be beneficial to those who contract the virus, he said in a statement. There is a clear consensus for vitamin D supplementations on a regular basis, as advised by local health authorities, as well as global health organizers. The study also found that a lower vitamin D status was more common in patients with severe critical COVID-19 compared to those with mild to moderate COVID-19. So there you go. Get out in the sun and drink your milk. Because it appears that the vitamin D is what's helping you the most. Let's talk from Dr. Malone. Dr. Malone talks about 3 DoD whistleblowers who claim the vaccine adverse events are being deleted after they data mine the database. The DoD, whoever's doing this, the data management, is going in and actively deleting cases manipulating the database. Let's listen.
Thomas Rentz, a lawyer, who I've actually went with me to testify to the Orthodox Jews. So we've known each other for quite a while now. Apparently had 3 Department of Defense whistleblowers come forward. And they had data mined the DoD health database, which is extensive. It's one of the best in the United States. You know, there's a lot of barriers to acquiring detailed information on you and me as civilians. You know, the HIPAA Act and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't apply to Department of Defense personnel. So they have detailed, granular records. And plus, you know, if you're in the DoD, if you're a warfighter and you go to the doc, it's a DoD doc. Okay, so all that information is really well characterized. And these 3, apparently, I've just skimmed the data. Thomas, you know, had his laptop open and showed me some of the things that are popping up. They pulled a massive amount of data out of the DoD databases and then did a whistleblower complaint. And Ron Johnson now has extended Senate protection to them formally as whistleblowers. So they came to Thomas Rentz with this information. And from what I saw, now this is preliminary, we haven't dissected it yet, but at the top level, I thought it was mind-blowing.
I saw it as well. The numbers were.
The information about miscarriages, the information about cancers, which is validating what Ryan Cole has been concerned about.
Neurological disease.
Neurologic disease, and the stillbirths is there. And apparently, according to Thomas, there's these brave whistleblowers have captured examples and information with the cardiac events, for instance, of the Department of Defense actually, whoever's doing this, the data management, is going in and actively deleting cases, manipulating the database.
So, grain of salt again. I haven't seen the evidence to go with that, but apparently and allegedly Dr. Malone has. And of course, grain of salt, because this is coming from Candace Owens, who, if you don't believe what it is that she has to say, she'll find all your personal information and blast it out onto the internet for disagreeing with her. Because that's what Candace Owens does. But definitely an interesting... No, we listened to that video already. Definitely an interesting take to this. Don't know the truth, the validity of it. Have seen no documentation of it, but we will see. We will see where this goes and if anything does come back up out of it. Let's grab one from ABC. Talking about the Selfie Fest again. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany turned over text messages to January 6th committee. From Jonathan Karl, Benjamin Siegel, and Will Staken. Former White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany turned over the text messages to the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Selfie Fest. According to a source familiar with the investigation, the latest indication of the extensive level of cooperation the committee has received from many witnesses. McEnany, who was at work at the White House and around then-President Trump before and during the Capitol attack, was subpoenaed by the panel for records and testimony in November and turned over text messages to committee investigators. A source familiar with their interactions with the committee has told ABC News that text messages from McEnany's phone were quoted in a recent letter the committee sent to Ivanka. The text came directly from documents turned over by McEnany, said the source. 1. No more stolen election talk. Fox News host Sean Hannity texts McEnany, according to the records. 2. Yes, impeachment and the 25th Amendment are real and many people will quit. Yes. I love that. Thank you. That is the playbook I will help reinforce. McEnany replied per the documents. And this is the exact reason for this, by the way. The January 6th committee has no intent of coming out here and actually using this to make some sort of criminal prosecution. They don't. This is for character assassination. In any other proceeding where evidence would be turned over to Congress, you would never see that evidence unless it was actually presented in the case of a DOJ complaint or a trial. The fact that ABC News has these text messages and is broadcasting them out there in a selective fashion too, by the way. They're not putting out a source where you can go back and read all the text messages. No, we can't do that because they might actually be used for evidence of a trial. But hey, here are text messages between Kayleigh McEnany and Sean Hannity saying, hey, don't talk about election interference or stolen anymore. They might 25th. Because they're not looking for evidence for anything. They don't have jack shit to stand on with the January 6th Selfie Fest committee. They never have. The FBI investigated it, said it wasn't an insurrection. The DOJ investigated it, said that they didn't have anything on most of these people except for simple trespass, and a couple of people who are getting hit because they went over and they attacked a police officer. They hurt people and took their stuff, essentially. But that's not what the January 6th Select Committee is doing. They're looking for dirt. They're looking for text messages like this that they can release to the American people and say, see, Hannity was in on it. Fox News was in on it. Our competitor was in on it. Kayleigh was in on it. It's all a conspiracy. Is this really what you want to vote for? Is this what you want to do? Because all the people that are running in 2022 with an R next to their name, they're exactly like this. And all the people who are going to run in 2024, and even the evil orange man himself, this is what you brought in here. A press secretary texting with a host of evil Fox News. That's what they're looking for. And you know what? I told you that from the beginning. There is no reason that should have been leaked. None. Zero. And here we are. From the Blaze. Capitol Police claim January 6 emails and videos are not public record, assert sovereign immunity to Judicial Watch suit. Well, yes, and they can't be FOIA'd either, just so you know. From Chris Pandolfo. Judicial Watch has challenged an attempt by the Capitol Police to block the conservative watchdog group's lawsuit to obtain videos and emails from the January 6th Selfie Fest. And the organization is seeking records related to the security of the Capitol on January 6th, communications between USCP and federal law enforcement, and all video footage from inside the Capitol between 12 p.m. and 9 p.m. when the riot took place. The watchdog group has asked for emails between USCP and executive team and the Capitol Police Board, as well as emails between USCP and the FBI, DOJ, and Department of Homeland Security. Congress, through its police department, has asserted that the requested videos and emails are not public records and that there's no public interest in their release. Oh, there's a lot of public interest in the release. Of what came out of the Capitol Police for that, there's a lot of public interest for that. The police department is also claiming sovereign immunity, which prevents citizens from suing for the release of documents, Judicial Watch said in a press statement. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen here. Noting that Congress is exempted from the Freedom of Information Act, Judicial Watch said it filed the lawsuit under the common law right of access to public records after the Capitol Police refused to respond to a records request on January 21st, 2021. And by the way, I'm going to use the same thing that the leftoids are using right now every time a conservative gets hit with something here that they might have to come back out and answer for. I'm going to use the exact same logic for this. But it works for the government. Because the government is who the Constitution is protecting us from. Now, if somebody comes out and tells you, well, if you have nothing to hide, then turn over your records, that person is a communist who's probably trying to get you done for something because, you know, they say that every person in the world commits 3 felonies a day. What was the old Soviet mantra? You bring me the man and I will find you the crime. But as far as the Capitol Police Department goes, that's a government agency. They should be transparent to the people. Unless it is going to directly get people killed, and there again, I reminded you that I understand top secret clearance. I don't like top secret clearance, but I understand it because there are people out there who have pretty major operations going on that could die, especially in our digital world, if everybody knew everything that was going on instantly all at once through social media. There are certain things that you can't be transparent about, and I don't like that, but I understand why that is. But as far as this shit goes, the Capitol Police can't be FOIA. They can't have a FOIA request. Congress can't have a FOIA request. Fuck you. No. Why? The Capitol Police especially should be subject to FOIA. They absolutely should. And yes, I knew there is something else going on outside of what happened at the Selfie Fest. And they are probably going to release it at some point. But that's going to be after they heavily sanitize it. Because there is going to be a demand for it. There's a public demand to get this out. And good on Judicial Watch for suing for it. From the Hill. We still have a long way to go. But there's no daily ignoramus today, so I'm not going to do a Stephen-length show, I'll tell you that, but well, maybe I will. Holy shit. From the Hill, Bill Maher defends Whoopi Goldberg, says she should not be canceled. From Carolyn Vakil, no, she shouldn't. Get up there, let her talk, and let the View decide how their viewership goes and whether or not they want to keep her on board. Let the free market decide. HBO host Bill Maher defended Whoopi Goldberg over comments she made about the Holocaust earlier this week, saying that she should not be canceled despite the fact that he disagreed with what she said. I had on last week Ira Glasser, former longtime head of the American Civil Liberties Union, talking about free speech. Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, As much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement, Maher said during his show on Friday, free speech. Maher said, while he disagreed at times with Goldberg's points of view on certain subjects, he noted that part of the American history includes the difference in perspective between white Americans and black Americans. Can we just understand that part of our sorry racial history in this country is that the point of view from a black person is often going to be different, sometimes shocking to a white person, Maher said. The Real-Time host pointed to comments the View host made in 2007 when she defended former Atlanta Falcons quarterback Michael Vick, who received federal charges related to his involvement in dogfighting. He's from the South. He's from the Deep South. This is part of his cultural upbringing, Goldberg said at the time, which drew blowback from the co-host Joy Behar, according to Reuters. And that's all understandable. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Maher is right. Whether or not Whoopi stays on The View, that's a decision for ABC and their parent company, Disney. Whether or not they feel they will lose money over the deal, and whether or not they feel that they will keep money, or maybe even earn more money, Streisand effect. As far as Whoopi Goldberg goes, no. She shouldn't be. And there shouldn't be an outrage mob that should be able to take her down. But number two, let's go take that same logic and apply it to the Joe Rogan Experience. Or Alex Jones. Why not put all that information out there where people can come back and do with it what they need to, but have access to the information, come back and view it, decide whether it's true or not, go back to research various different points to go back to try to countermand it, and have a debate over it, instead of sanitizing any view that they don't like or they don't want. No, Goldberg shouldn't be canceled. She should be able to speak whatever stupid fucking thing that it is that she has to say, and then her handlers, either in Hollywood as an agent or The View, should have to decide whether or not that is helpful or hurtful to their brand. End of story. From WGN9. Illinois lawmakers debate proposals to curb crime following violent 2021. From Taman Bradley. Crime is on the agenda for Springfield lawmakers during the current session, with Republicans and Democrats drafting new legislation to confront rising gun violence, carjackings, and organized retail theft. I don't know, dude. That sounds like a Lightfoot problem to me. Not a Springfield problem. Maybe do something in Rockford, too, because it's just about as bad, but... Republicans are calling for $125 million in funding for law enforcement for body cameras, police training, outreach, and community policing. They're also pushing stiffer penalties for providing guns to convicted felons, aggravated battery against officers, and violent gun offenses. Now, see, this is a good idea. It depends on the felony, obviously. But the founders wouldn't have considered somebody with criminal lunacy to have the ability to carry a gun. Your rights wouldn't extend to somebody with criminal lunacy, including convicted felons. And if somebody goes out and provides a firearm to that person, then yes, hit them harder. Because knowingly selling a firearm to somebody who cannot buy a firearm, yeah, go back and hit them harder. And there are people out there that do that. Now, of course, on top of that, you also need to enforce said law. You can have all the laws on the books in the world, and if nobody's out there willing to enforce them, then what's the point? It's kind of like if I became sheriff over here in Rock County. If I became the sheriff in this county and decided, because I would say, okay, no more speeding tickets. No more registration tickets. If you're pulled over by a Rock County Sheriff's Department, it's not going to be for speeding. It's going to be for something that you're absolutely doing illegally. But yeah, we're not going to do simple traffic stops. We're not going to do the bagman stuff for the state. You're not going to get a seatbelt ticket. You're not going to get a registration ticket. From my county officers. Now, I can't speak for the state patrol. And I can't speak for the city of Janesville or any of the other municipalities around here. If you want to speed in their municipality, you got to answer to them. If the law is not able to be enforced because it's not willingly enforced, if the department's not willingly enforcing it, then people still get away with that. And in Chicago especially, that's a big problem with the distribution of guns, because you can make a lot of money selling a gun to somebody in a gang who can't legally have that gun. You can make a buttload of money doing that. So you can put the law in the book, but you still have to enforce it. These measures are necessary to not only give law enforcement the tools they need, but also to send a clear message. Go after our police and there will be consequences, says State Senator Sue Rezin of Champaign. The Democratic majority counters that over the last several budget, lawmakers have appropriated funds for more officers, bulletproof vests, additional training for mental health services. Stiffer penalties themselves don't work. Well, they do if you enforce them, said LG Sims. What works is investments in dealing with the root cause of the crimes. I'm not completely against that idea either, actually. So Springfield is going from defund the police to fund the police, allegedly, apparently. We'll see if it goes. I don't really have a lot of faith in Springfield. But that's what we do off of that. From NBC News, banned. Books on race and sexuality are disappearing from Texas schools in record numbers. From Mike Hicksonbaugh. Let's see what this propaganda piece has to say. From a secluded spot in her high school library, a 17-year-old girl spoke softly into her cell phone, worried that someone might overhear her saying the things she's hidden from her parents for years. They don't know she's queer, the student told a reporter, and given the past comments about homosexuality being a sin, she's long feared that they will learn her secret if they saw what she reads in the library. That space, with its endless row of books about characters from all sorts of backgrounds, have been her safe haven, she said. One of the few places where she feels completely free to be herself. But books, including one of her recent favorites, have been vanishing from the shelves of Katy Independent School District libraries in the past few months. Gone, Jack of Hearts and Other Parts, a book she'd read last year about a gay teenager who isn't shy about discussing his adventurous sex life. Also banished The Handsome Girl and Her Beautiful Boy. All Boys Aren't Blue and Lawn Boy, all coming-of-age stories that prominently feature LGBTQ characters and passages about sex. Some titles were removed after parents formally complained, but others were quietly banned by the district without official reviews. As I've struggled with my own identity as a queer person, it's been really, really important to me that I have access to these books, said the girl, whom NBC is not naming to avoid revealing her sexuality, which is fair. And I'm pretty positive she's a minor too, so yeah, definitely don't be revealing identities here, NBC. And I'm sure it's really important to other queer kids. You should be able to see yourself reflected on the page. Her safe haven is now a battleground in an unprecedented effort by parents and conservative politicians in Texas to ban books dealing with race, sexuality, and gender from schools. An NBC News investigation has found hundreds of titles have been pulled from libraries across the state for review, sometimes over the objections of school librarians, several of whom told NBC News they face increasingly hostile work environments and mounting pressure to preemptively pull books that might draw complaints. Okay, we're going to back off on this. Now, this is a big thing that's happening across Texas, but it seems to be only affecting school libraries. And it seems to be only affecting books with graphic scenes of sex. As mentioned in the article, all of the books that were mentioned here include graphic sexual scenes. Now, as far as the unnamed young girl from Katy, Texas, there should still be, and I don't know if there's a public library, and I would actually like to see how this gets addressed if there isn't. But there should still be a public library that's not affiliated with the school, still taxpayer funded, of course, but not affiliated with the school, where these books should be accessible. I would think that that would be a thing for that. Now, and I say this, and I actually have to ask how this goes off of this, because I grew up in a small town where the high school library was the public library. And that, in the perfect scenario that I'm describing, or not the perfect scenario, but the scenario that I'm describing here, that would be a challenge to cross. Because if your public library is in the same building, used by the school as the school library as well, then you have a question as to whether or not the State Board of Education should be able to ban books out of that library, because it is technically the public library, not the school library. With that being said, yes, coming out of the school library, if you have books that are describing graphic scenes of anal sex, of fondling, of fingering, of any of this, and the school board, comprised of parents, decide that they don't want their kids to be able to have access to this, it's not a book burning. No. What other groups are doing out there, that's the book burning. Oh, well, this person did this so many years ago. You should never read their books. In fact, we should take their books out of circulation. That's a book burning. But you still have the option to go to Kindle. You still have the option to go to the public library, if there's a public library in town. And yes, that is a hurdle that would need to be crossed. And a debate that would need to be had if the school library is the public library. I don't know if that's the case in Katy, Texas. I know in Redacted, where I grew up, that is the case. The public library is the school library. That is a hurdle that needs to be crossed. But yes, these books should absolutely be accessible to people. But the school board has the final say over the school library, not the public library. So it's a debate to have. We'll see. From the Daily Mail, BLM leaders are warned they will be held personally liable if they fail to disclose details of $60 million in donations by California DOJ as charities' financial mysteries deepen. From Natasha Anderson, Ronnie Reyes, and Harriet Alexander for DailyMail.com. The leaders of BLM could be held personally liable if they fail to disclose financial records about the charity's $60 million in donations within the next 60 days. In a letter issued to BLM on Monday, California DOJ accused the charity of failing to submit its annual financial report and alleged it was in delinquent status. An organization that is delinquent, suspended, or revoked is not in good standing and is prohibited from engaging in conduct for which registration is required, including soliciting or disbursement of charitable funds, the letter reads. The DOJ requested a copy of BLM's annual registration renewal fee report and its 2020 IRS tax forms within 2 months' time. If the organization fails to submit these documents, its charity exemption status will be revoked. It could also face fines for each month of partial month for which the reports are delinquent. The letter, which was obtained by the Washington Examiner, threatened that directors, trustees, officers, and return preparers would be personally liable for all penalties, interest, and other costs incurred to restore the exempt status. The DOJ notes that charitable assets cannot be used to pay these avoidable costs. Oof. Because that's all that they have coming in. The notice comes just days after it was revealed that BLM has not had anyone in charge of its finances since Patrisse Cullors resigned last May. So this is interesting, and the fact that California is going after them too really interests me because, well, I'm not surprised that California is going after them because they need that sweet, sweet tax money, and any place that they can go. But I mean, this is political suicide for the California DOJ. You know, the California DOJ might be accused of not believing that Black Lives Matter. Say it! Say those words! No. Say them! Do you not believe that Black Lives Matter? No, I don't agree with the organization, as evidenced by this. But I'm sure that the DNC and Kamala Harris will get through there and make sure all their records are scrubbed within the next 60 days to make it look that everything is legitimate, that all the amendments will get edited, and hey, they'll be able to produce a clean sheet of income within the next 60 days. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. From the Hill, it's too bad our New York friends have already had to take off for the day. De Blasio reportedly considering a run for House seat, from Michael Schnell. Why don't you go after New York 14? Former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is reportedly considering a run for the U.S. House just a month after his term expired in the Big Apple. The New York Post and Politico both reported on Wednesday, citing people familiar with the mayor's thinking, that de Blasio is eyeing a run in New York's 11th, after redistricting expanded it to include Park Slopes, where the ex-mayor lives. Let's see where New York 11 is. So that is, it looks like around Elizabeth, Woodbridge Township. It is, oh, it's Staten Island, that's why. So at the river with New Jersey. And then across the bridge from Brooklyn and the Belt Parkway. Okay. Well, that's interesting. If he does jump into the race, however, de Blasio will face, first off, against Democratic Rep. Max Rose, in what would likely be a contentious primary. Rose is vying for his old seat after losing to sitting Rep. Nicole Maliotakis in 2020. Maliotakis is Republican. The New York State Legislature approved a new congressional map on Wednesday that could assist Democrats in flipping as many as 3 House seats in November. The new lines favor Democrats, but it's not gerrymandering, because gerrymandering is an evil Republican tactic. The new lines favor Democrats in 22 House districts and Republicans in 4. The new map drew Maliotakis' district more blue. The map will now go to Kathy Hochul's desk for a signature. Maliotakis slammed the new lines as a blatant attempt by the Democratic leadership in Albany to steal the seat. But it's not gerrymandering if a Democrat does it. It's only gerrymandering and evil if a Republican does it. Even after New Yorkers voted twice by ballot referendum for nonpartisan maps, according to Politico. Rose has not shied away from publicly expressing his disapproval of de Blasio in 2020. The then congressman released an ad saying Bill de Blasio is the worst mayor in the history of New York City. That's a pretty tall order to get over. I don't even think he's the worst mayor in recent history. But he's probably going to run. Will he win the general? I have no idea. But we'll see what happens with that. We're almost done, you guys. From ABC 6 out of Rhode Island. Controversy over Rhode Island sex education bill. From Darren Botello. Dozens of Rhode Islanders testified and reached out to ABC 6 News through email and social media with a hearing on a new sex education bill on Wednesday. The House Education Committee met at the State House at 3 p.m. over the bill that outlines sex education for grades 6 through 12 to include same-sex relationships, gender identity, and pleasure-based sexual relations. Any child under 18, we should not be talking about sexual pleasure. We should be talking about some of these topics that they're looking to roll into sexual education, parent Kimberly Quagan said. I think it should be basically from a clinical standpoint, that's one thing, and I actually think anything that they want to teach regarding this matter, their curriculum should be approved by the parents. The primary sponsor of the bill, Representative Rebecca Kislak, would not define what pleasure meant in the legislation during an interview. I think that one word in the legislation is not should not be the focus here. Rep. Kislak said. Another member of the Education Committee, Rep. Sherry Roberts, told ABC 6 News, "Let them decide because each person is different and parents know their children." Parents in Rhode Island are able to opt their children out of sex education by contacting their child's principal, which, I mean, as it should be, no matter what. But, I mean, when we look back at some of this, too, and we see where a lot of this goes, this is, I mean, what do you do at this point? Where do you go? What do you see? What do you do? But when you look at something like this, when they go into like the pleasurable aspect of it, yeah, I mean it does become a level of propaganda as it goes. This is almost grooming. And also, I think a part of this, because we've talked about so much sexual degeneracy out there, the homosexuality agenda, the transgendered agenda, even the abortion agenda at this point, I think I'll play a role into this when I look at something like this. Because when you have sex with someone of the same sex as you, you're not doing it for reproduction. And I've taken sex ed, and I've been through this. I know what they teach, and it is like the article said, it's very clinical. It's extremely clinical. This is what happens when this happens there. This is how the egg gets formed. This is what the period is. This is how this fits together. This goes in here. This goes in here. Look at this big book that's got flowers all over it, girls. Look at this big book that's talking about, your size is okay, guys. All this kind of thing. But it was a very clinical standpoint. But it also focused basically on the aspect of the fact of, the primary purpose of what's happening here is reproduction. For you to get pregnant, have a baby, and advance the species. Whereas, again, if you have sex with someone of the same gender, you're not doing it for reproductive purposes. You are doing it for pleasure. And yes, there are important sides of this, endorphins and pleasure, that come to strengthen a relationship. I understand that. But it's the same thing with the transgender issue. I think the majority of people who take some sort of hormone replacement therapy are sterilized by doing so. And if they get the surgery, I don't understand how a lot of that works, but from what I understand, if you get the surgery, you're also sterilized at that point. Meaning that the sex that you have for pretty well the rest of your life will be for pleasure and not for reproductive purposes. The abortion agenda, in which a lot of people on Twitter, when they argue pro-life, are arguing the fact that the primary evolutionary focus of sex is for reproduction, to advance the species. While the abortion lobbyists are saying, hey, I should be able to go have sex with as many people I want, and have as many people as I want blasted in me as I can, and not have to face any consequences. That's what abortion is for. And it does seem like there's a big push to take the reproductive aspect out of the sexual education. Especially if that is what they're going to start to focus on, gender identity and pleasure-based sexual relationships. But we'll see what happens with that. Speaking of school, Stacey Abrams got into it. Unmasked Stacey Abrams visit Georgia school where kids still have to mask up. From Virginia Kruta. But she's fully vaccinated, which she probably should be at that fucking weight. Excuse me. Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams took some heat over the weekend after appearing without a mask at a public school where the students are still required to mask up on a daily basis. As Fox News reported, Abrams visited Glenwood Elementary, outside of Atlanta, this past week to kick off the 3rd annual African American Read-In, where she met with young students and teachers. The principal, Dr. Holly Brookins, took to Twitter after this visit to post 4 pictures on her Twitter account of Abrams' visit, which included 3 pictures of Abrams without a mask, despite the Decatur City Commission reinstated a mandatory masking ordinance last month. The school's principal, Dr. Holly Brookins, tweeted a photo of Abrams with a classroom full of math students, and Abrams shared the tweet with her own comments. Extraordinary way to tick off the 3rd annual African American Read-In at Glenwood in Black History Month. Thrilled to host Stacey Abrams, author of Stacey's Extraordinary Words. Huge thanks to special guest and my mentor, Car Stephen MJ, for the amazing intro, Brookins tweeted. Abrams added, spending time with Glenwood's amazing students, faculty, and staff ranks as spectacular, delightful, and outstanding. Thank you for having me. There she is. All the kids around her masked. She is not. All the teachers around her are masked. Abrams is not. What kind of imaging is that? My God. That is literally rules for thee, not for me. I am the elite, the politician. I am not a public servant. I am your leader, your commander, your ruler. And I will decide that every one of you has to wear a face covering. But I, your elite, your ruler, does not. That is exactly what this says to everybody who's looking at this photo. Literally everybody in the photo except for Abrams is masked up. Good job, Abrams. This is going... Yeah, KTZed's in a meeting. This is going on the stack for tonight. This might wind up being surprise stupidity, actually. Ron Perlman apparently wants war to never change. Hellboy actor Ron Perlman says it's time for blue states to separate from red states. From Sam Mangold-Lennon. Ron Perlman, the Hollywood movie star known for playing tough-talking, cigar-chomping loudmouths, recently endorsed the concept of national divorce via social media status. Here's the post. It's time that every state, they would elect Republicans to represent them and all the rest of us to separate. You don't want to live in my world, and I certainly don't want to live in yours, because war never changes. I hate that I'm such a Fallout fan, because that is the voice of the Fallout franchise. Every time you start up one of those games and you hear war never changes. In the 21st century, humanity had come to the peak of its breaking point, when the resource wars brought people together to fight over the last reserves of oil and uranium in the world. And people have always been fighting for resources. And now, because of the great nuclear fire, people will come out from these massive vaults and try to live the life that they want to. But the fights for resources will continue, because war never changes. Yeah. But he's this in real life. Perlman's disdain for conservatives and the Republican Party is well documented. After the passing of popular conservative radio personality Rush Limbaugh, Perlman took to Twitter to express his condolences with the devil, who will no doubt have to spend the rest of eternity with Rush Limbaugh. The Hellboy actor used his platform to accuse a disabled veteran turned ICE agent of having a Nazi symbol tattooed on his arm. Yep. I know, I'm a leftist. D-list actor. So my Twitter feed is probably deceiving me. But is that an iron cross tattooed on this hero's arm? This is a mistake, right? Because the iron cross is a symbol of Nazi Germany. Didn't Chester Bennington have that same cross on his arm, by the way? I'm pretty positive he did. Gotta be my Twitter feed, leaning left again. Because war never changes. Instead of simply apologizing when proved wrong, Perlman took the opportunity to criticize ICE, saying the organization tends to racially profile decent people. My apologies. I mistook the symbol on this man's arm before I knew the facts. So again, I apologize to the man in the picture for my mistake. Maybe it was the gusto, relish the agency seems to project in their obsession to racially profile decent people. Because war never changes. Article goes on to say, however, Perlman's call for secession is unique. He joins a growing list of celebrities, and Tim Pool, who frankly have more influence than we tend to acknowledge, who have called for national divorce. Okay, I'm telling you right now, and I could get so angry I could take my beanie off, but the Civil War is coming. Okay? And it's already here. We don't know what a new Civil War would look like. It's probably a bad Tim Pool impression, but it is what it is. So, that's what we see out of Ron Perlman. Time to split back up. But the federal government isn't going to let all those sweet, sweet resources go away. Another one that came out of the Discord from our friend Ron Helton today. Instacart worker hailed his hero after saving a man during delivery. From Aaron Steinbuch. An Instacart shopper is being hailed as a hero, including by model Bella Hadid, after she tearfully recounted how following her gut instinct may have saved a customer's life during a propane leak. In her emotional TikTok video, Jessica Higgs said she received an order from a woman who was ordering food for her elderly dad who was unable to shop for himself. I'm going the extra mile for this customer like I always do, but for whatever reason this time I was going even further and checking the back and everything, the cheerful woman says in her car. Higgs explained that the daughter had told her to drop the order off on the porch, but that something was telling me, no, you gotta help this man out, Higgs said. She says that the man came out. She offered to help him bring the groceries inside despite the Instacart protocol. But I used my judgment and I brought the groceries inside and I put them down wherever he wanted me to put them, and you're not supposed to do it, but I did, Higgs continues. That video. Nope, just a picture. Oops, I closed that. Hold on, let me see if I can get that back. I can get it back. You're just supposed to take a picture and leave, and I couldn't just leave, she says. I got to message this lady because I was very concerned for her dad, and he just looked sick. And I don't know what to do, so I messaged her and I said, if they say the order is complete, I won't be able to message you, and I want to tell you this. She said she told the woman that she saw a propane tank in her father's home. I was there maybe 5 feet and I got dizzy, and I said, there's got to be a leak, she recalled. According to Higgs, her daughter replied that she would have her son go check on the father and later proceed to change her tip on the order from $14 to $100. However, what made Higgs more emotional was the message the daughter wrote. Thank you so much. Once my son went to check on my dad, it turned out it was definitely leaking. You definitely saved my dad and my younger son's life, the woman wrote. The video received more than 3 million views as of Friday morning, and among the roughly 155,000 comments was one by Hadid. You're not just an Instacart worker, you're helping people every single day in ways you probably don't even know. Thank you for being you, the 25-year-old supermodel wrote. So absolutely good on that too. And I mean, you know, it's not always if you see something, say something, but I mean, this woman has gone the extra mile for somebody who's clearly having problems because he's got to go to the Instacart because his daughter says, you know, he can't get out and shop. So instead of trying to drag everything in from the porch, let's get it set up on the table where this guy can go, even if it's against Instacart policy. And then, you know, you go in and you feel dizzy and you're like, hey, something's not right. Good on this woman. Absolutely. And I hate the fact that companies, because of the world that we live in, have to have policies that make it harder for people to be able to do this. All right. From the street. Rotterdam Bridge to be dismantled for Jeff Bezos' yacht. Bezos' yacht, called Y721, is being built in the neighboring city of El Blasterdam and will reportedly cost him $500 million. From Dan Wheel. The Dutch city of Rotterdam will temporarily dismantle part of a historic bridge so that Amazon can get Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' yacht can fit through it, likely this summer. Bezos' boat, now called Y721, is being built in the neighbor city of El Blasterdam. It needs to pass through the Rotterdam to make it to the North Sea or English Channel, but it's too tall for the Koningshaven Bridge. The 417-foot-long, 130-foot-high, 3-mast boat is being built by Dutch company Oceano and will cost Bezos an estimated $500 million. It will be the world's biggest sailing yacht, according to Boat International. Iceberg dead ahead. Bezos and Oceano will pay for the steel bridge, known locally as De Hef, to be taken apart. It involves removing the bridge's middle portion. De Hef has been named a national landmark. It received major renovation in 2014 to 2017, and afterward, the city pledged not to dismantle it again. But then they got that sweet, sweet Amazon money, and oh no, we'll do anything that you want if you bring us in your Amazon money, and you just brought us in a bunch of money for building the boat, so we'll do whatever you want. And yes, I mean, Francis Van Gijs puts it correctly. From an economic perspective, we attach great importance to preserving employment. Francis Van Gijs, the Rotterdam municipality spokesperson, told the Washington Post, which Bezos owns. So I can understand that, and I can understand where the city would change their tune on doing something like that. I don't think this is as big of a deal as a lot of people think that it is. And as long as it can be restored to its full functionality and its full originality, I don't have as big of a problem with this. And the people of Rotterdam, who have $500 million coming in for probably the first time in a very long time in one lump sum. You're helping the people. And again, they just dismantled the bridge. They actually took it apart to go back and remodel it and revamp it, to restore it. They actually took it apart for that. So this isn't completely out of the question, and yet on top of that, you brought in that much money, and now Oceano will have to pay that much in taxes to go back into the community. While I hate the fact that the government is involved, I do understand what's actually going to happen with this, especially with European-style politics. I can see why they would make this concession. I do. But I'm sure there will be historical outrage too. We'll see what happens with that. All right, and the last one. This is one that I actually wanted to talk to you guys about last week here. The Libs of TikTok woman gave an interview. Woman behind Libs of TikTok tells her story in a new interview from Ben Ziesloft. The anonymous woman behind Libs of TikTok, a social media empire built on exposing progressive TikTok content to the general public, explained her work in a new interview. Content shared by Libs of TikTok features the worst of leftism, for example, a college professor arguing for the acceptance of pedophilia, and an English teacher pressing students to pledge their allegiance to the gay pride banner. I remember that one. The account also features bizarre left-wing guilt lectures and degenerate behavior increasingly seen in American cities. Like this one.
So I just finished 6.25 mile run. Why do some people look so cute when they run? I mean, I've got my...
Move, bitch! Get out of my fucking way! It's Black History Month!
That was actually funny. There's another one.
They're tracked too, dummies.
Or heartbreaking, these kids don't deserve a terrible, abusive mother.
D is for drag. You can strut and dance in clothes that you love. Dresses, heels, or pants. That's you. N is for number, and you don't identify as just being a girl or just being a guy. That's you. P is for pen. You connect with a vibe no matter the gender. It's about what's inside. That's you. J, B, C, D, F, L, Web.
Yeah, these kids don't deserve a terrible, abusive mother. You're correct. Though the account has achieved notoriety among conservatives on social media, the woman who runs Libs of TikTok told the New York Post that she quit her full-time job to run the project, yet does not do this for money or fame. I'm not some politician or blue-check journalist, she said, and people feel like they have someone that they can talk to when they have no one else to ask to help them spread it. With me, they have a place to reach out to get the message out, she added. I feel like there's so many small stories that are so important that aren't getting out, and that's what I'm here for. It sometimes feels like a mini Project Veritas. She also told the Post that left-leaning people often quietly pay attention to Libs of TikTok. I think a lot of people in the middle follow me, and probably a lot of liberals and Democrats. Well, the latter is probably so they can come back and report you and hate watch. Though she's often the subject of vitriol, she feels compassion for those who fill her account with direct messages and insults. I've been called a Nazi, white supremacist, grifter, liar, she recounted. I'm not offended. I think these people are so broken. Is this Stephen Ignoramus? They're so broken, man. All the left-wing media are brainwashing people. Nevertheless, her content has indeed changed minds. People have said your videos opened my eyes to what's going on, or your videos have convinced me to run for a school board. I think we've gotten a few messages that said, I used to be on the left has taken over all the schools and universities, and turned out that these people now who are so confused about their identity, they're now teachers, and we need to stop this cycle. So, probably a good interview. I actually want to see if I can get the full interview and listen, because I think this is... Let's have a look. Yeah, there's the interview, which will be in the Daily Wire article, which I can put into the Discord if you guys want that. But I'd actually be interested to see like the full interview off of this. But I didn't realize this wasn't a Daily Wire. I thought that it was like Candace Owens or somebody interviewed this woman, not the New York Post. But definitely something to look for. Definitely something to watch. And yeah, I mean, we've seen the crazy. We've watched Libs of TikTok video on this channel because they're so outrageous. So that's what we're seeing coming out of that. And with that, we're done. But it's Monday. So our little bit of culture coming off of this comes from Memory Beta, because we will read one of the Ferengi rules of acquisition, as we do every Monday. Because I'm an ultra-capitalist, which I believe means that I won the 8-axis test. Because I am an ultra-capitalist, and the Ferengi themselves are ultra-capitalist, we read one of the Ferengi rules of acquisition, the rules in which Ferengi conduct their lives, their business, both within their own society and when they deal with alien societies. Because we all hope to get into the golden treasury at the end of our lives. So, where are we at right now? The last one we did was the 52nd rule of acquisition, which, I mean, they're not fully in order and they do skip a lot of numbers. The last one we read was the 52nd rule of acquisition. Never ask when you can take. And now we go on to the 53rd rule of acquisition, which I actually feel a little bit, maybe just a touch on the side of here, but the 53rd rule of acquisition is never trust anybody taller than you. This comes from DS9 novel, Mission Gamma Twilight. Now, given what we see off of there, the Ferengi are not a tall species, and I mean, they typically went out and picked relatively short actors to play the Ferengi. Ethan Phillips, who played Neelix in Voyager, Jeffrey Combs, who played everybody, in every Star Trek. I mean, Jeffrey Combs had all kinds of different acting credits in all the series, but he's relatively short. He's like 5'2", 5'3". Obviously, Armin Shimmerman. And I can't think of the kid's name. And I used to follow. He just passed away not too long ago. I used to follow him on Twitter. But I mean, they picked the short actors to come back out and do this. Because the Ferengi are themselves not a tall species. So, coming out into the galaxy, especially given the business relationships that the Ferengi deal with people, because they always are trying to make everything go in their favor, most everybody that they're going to encounter throughout the galaxy is indeed taller than they are. So I can see that, only trust a Ferengi or only trust somebody, but yeah, never trust a man taller. I can see where that comes out of that. Now, looking into the real world application, this is one where I would say that we do not apply this in the real world. That we do not, because we don't judge people on their external characteristics. We judge them for their internal characteristics and whether or not they're a dick to us. Or whether or not they put themselves out there and are trustworthy to us. That is how we judge people. But if you come into a species that's normally 20% shorter than everybody else around you, and you are trying to conduct business in your favor with everybody else around you, I can see where a rule like this would come into play, where you indeed shouldn't trust anybody taller than you, because you shouldn't trust anybody who doesn't follow the rules of acquisition. Works for the Ferengi, doesn't work for us. Let's get out of here. Let's throw some outro music up here and let's go. So, we have no Daily Ignoramus today, but that won't stop you from getting your daily dose of Stephen Ignoramus and the music out of here. We're going to head out of here for the day. Guys, be back here in about 7 hours for KTZed Redemption, where we'll be talking more about the trucker convoy, more about the Rogan controversy, because 2 of those came back out. We'll be talking about Whoopi, we'll be talking about some Senate news, we'll be talking about Zucker resigning. It's going to be all this and more tonight over on KTZed Redemption, so come back and join us for that. Otherwise, be back here tomorrow for more news and more headlines and see what stupid things they did over the next 24 hours in the news, and we'll see you then. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. And of course, if you're on Twitch, stick around and we'll go find somebody to raid because there's no Ignoramus today. So we will see you next time. Take care.